Hello and welcome to episode 71 of Around the Lens, your live weekly visual journalism roundtable show coming at you every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. We are doing this show live every week for you because we love you and we love creating great content for you. I host this show every week with my co-host, Zach Roberts. Zach.
Hello. Hi. I'm Zach Roberts, and if you want to learn more about us, you can head on over to aroundthelens.com. You can follow us on Facebook at AtL Podcast and on Instagram at Around the Lens, and of course on Twitter at AroundLens.
That's it, Zach. You got it. And we're also giving away a camera bag this month, all throughout the month of April. If you want to win the signature 13 camera bag from the great manufacturer Think Tank, all you got to do is three things. One, you got to subscribe to our newsletter, which you can go to aroundthelens.com and click the link and add your email to that. You have to like our Facebook page and like Think Tank's Facebook page. So you got to like both our Facebook pages. And finally, all you got to do is leave a comment on anything that we post during the month of April on our Facebook page. So, just leave a substantive comment, something that shows you watched, listened, or read the material that we posted, and hopefully something that'll start a conversation. So we've seen a lot of great comments and posts on the Facebook page. I'm really happy to see that. So keep that up. Keep on posting. You just got to do that before the end of the month, and you are entered to win the contest. We've already given away 2 camera bags so far, so really want to give away this $279 camera bag. So go ahead and enter, be a part of the contest, because, you can't win if you don't play. All right, so let's get on with the show and introduce our panelists tonight. We got 2 great panelists coming at us. Our newcomer, Joseph Rushmore. Joseph, tell us about yourself.
I'm a photographer in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Do freelance work for local publications like Tulsa Voice, a little bit for the Tulsa World. Right now, covering the new resistance camps that have opened up to fight the Diamond Pipeline here in Oklahoma. There's a couple of those, and so spending most of my time at those camps documenting that.
So you said this is the Diamond Pipeline?
Yes, the Diamond Pipeline from Cushing, Oklahoma to Memphis, Tennessee. They're trying to stop that. Certain groups.
Because we're all familiar with the other pipeline that's always in the news, which now I'm blanking on the name of it. What's it called?
The Dakota Access. Yeah.
So this is something, do you think it's going to be as big as that pipeline, the story, or is it more just something local?
It's hard to say. I would be surprised if it got that large, just because, the police are very aware of this camp already, and they all know what happened to Standing Rock, and so I don't know if it would get that big, but yeah.
Okay, cool. Now, just out of curiosity, what drew you to Tulsa, Oklahoma? Is it where you're from, or was there opportunities there, or is it just a place you want to be?
I came back here after living around Dallas for about 12 years to be closer to my family and kind of strike out as a freelancer because it's a little easier living with family. I don't have to pay rent.
Yeah.
And it's like a big plus right now. Yeah.
All right, great. Well, our other panelist tonight is returning panelist coming at us, I think, from one of the first 10 episodes we did, Mr. Mark DiOrio. Mark, tell us about yourself and what you've been up to the last, I guess, year or so.
Certainly, Dave. Well, the past year, I started actually working as a university photographer at Colgate University, liberal arts college in central New York here. And I started that in August of last year. And then before that, as you know, for about 5 years, I was at a small to medium-sized daily newspaper called the Observer Dispatch in Utica. I was their photo editor / chief photographer since 2011. That was April of 2011. And before that, as you knew, I was down at a newspaper in Florida, community newspaper down there. So I had put in maybe about 10 years into small to medium-sized community newspapers, and the university job came along, and I said, well, I'm ready for a change. How can I apply what I've learned in news photography to the university side of things? And their communication department. And, when I went there, that's what they're kind of looking for. They were looking for a photographer that wasn't going to stage so much as actually work on capturing, what's called kind of like the spirit of Colgate, or the spirit of the university. And, they hired me, and it's been a pretty good gig so far. And they sent me to San Francisco last fall. They sent me to Jamaica back in February to go cover a study abroad group. And then they're going to actually be sending me down to Mexico in June to cover a group of students who are doing an archaeological dig. So
wow.
It's actually quite a bit more exciting than the newspaper had its exciting moments, but they would never send me that far away for anything.
What,
so,
Utica? A Utica paper didn't fly out to cover the fight.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, Mark.
But at one time when they were owned by Gannett, they would have. They actually flew
That's true, yeah.
photographer down out to Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Wow.
Am I pronouncing that correctly? Yeah, but they flew her there in 2002 because in this area, we actually had a large population of Bosnian immigrants that started filtering in since the mid-90s to escape the war over there. And they actually did a pretty big piece following this one resident back to her roots to try and find, I believe it was her brother that had gotten, lost during the war. They, only to discover that he had gotten killed, and, she found his remains, and they sent a photographer there to cover that, but they haven't done it in quite some time. So the farthest they send any photographer now, I think, is maybe Lake Placid, which is about 2.5, 3 hours north of here.
Right.
Yeah,
Covering the strife and anguish and suffering in Lake Placid.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is, the only reason they would send a photographer up to Lake Placid is because we had a local girl. Her name's Erin Hamlin. She won the bronze medal in 2012 in the Olympics in Russia. So, actually,
sweet.
Yeah, I believe it. If I remember hearing correctly, it's the first American to ever medal in luge.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken.
All right.
So she actually broke a record, and they're all proud of her here. But then she still competed once a year up in Lake Placid, and so we got to go cover Erin. So
yeah. All right. Cool. I think you have a great job there, Mark. And I think any job that'll pay you to travel is definitely number one in my book. So that's great. I think it's definitely a lot better than, the jobs you had when you were in Florida, working at that newspaper, where they, I remember the stories. I'm working like 16 stories a day.
I think there were about 2 days in the 4.5 years I was there. They had me shoot 11 assignments a day. So my average was 6.
Yeah. Wow.
Which, on the plus side of things, Dave, it really taught me as a photographer when I was younger to think quick on my feet and to, recognize moments pretty quickly. So I didn't exactly have the time to, dilly-dally around and just chill out at an assignment. I had to look, find it quickly, and move on, which, of course, that's also the downside. You don't have the time to really wait for the event or, action to unfold in front of you. So.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting, and when you're on a deadline, when you have to get something out really quick, you shoot a lot less, but you're shooting much more focused. And maybe that's a topic for another day, another show. But what's shooting less, shooting more, what's better? And at the end of the day, I mean, for you, I'm sure you probably only shot maybe a couple dozen shots, maybe 100 shots at any particular shoot you were at. Almost like if you had a few rolls of film, right?
It depends. Well, rolls of film. We're not going back that far.
I'm saying the equivalent. The equivalent if you had like a couple rolls of 24, or a couple rolls of 36.
It all depended on what it was. I mean, sometimes it was softball or tennis, so you'd shoot more, and then depending on some events they wanted a full photo page or spread out of it, so you would have to shoot more with that. It all depended on what it was. Other things were, because it was Florida and it was in a retirement community, it was the knitting group or something along those lines, or some other arts and crafts thing. But
I could shoot thousands of shots of knitting. That's put that thing on high speed burst. Bam, get the knitting shots.
But I made a great group of portraits from that experience as well. So
that's the sort of stuff that, like, it's so rare that it's like I never get to do those assignments that I actually would love to, because it actually it forces you to be creative. I mean, like, I just covered the science march, and it was like, there's great signs, there's great, it was terrible raining and everything like that, but like, it's just easy to take good photos of those scenes. Like, the actual kind of like quote unquote boring assignments or whatever sometimes actually make better you end up making better photos, because it forces you to actually think about things, as opposed to just like, I took 1,500 frames at the science march this weekend, not including video as well. So it's like, anyway.
Bet you took thousands of frames of video.
Yes. Well, I shoot at 30 frames per second, so yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get on with the show. We got a lot of show to talk about. Hot off the presses, Instagram shuts down the botting service Instagress. If you've never heard of this service, basically what it does or did was essentially allowed you as an Instagram user to have this service essentially, follow people, and if they followed you back, it kept them, or if it didn't follow them back, it unfollowed them. There was a lot of different settings. You could set the frequency of how many people followed, it didn't follow. You could have it set it up so it would send out sort of generic messages to other people's photos, things like "great job," "excellent shot," "well done," emoji. Anyways, I've never used this service for anything. I never used it for my own self or for Around the Lens. Never used a botting service to increase, our followers. But I know people who have, and I know that this service shutting down is probably going to put a cramp in them. Ultimately, because in addition to this service shutting down, Crowdfire shut down a few months ago, if not more so. And that was another service that a lot of Instagram users used, not to automate the following of people, but just to see who followed you back. That's one of the biggest things if you're having an Instagram user that you would really want to know, is that if the person you're following you back. Because, if you're trying to grow users, anyone who knows this is, one of the ways to do that is to follow a lot of people in the hopes that they follow you back. And I'll be honest, full disclosure, that's what we tried to do when we started the Around the Lens Instagram page. But since then, I've reverted all that sort of shenanigans and strictly do, natural, honest following. But again, never use this service, but it does, I think, put an interesting wrinkle in the whole use of Instagram as a service, because I know all of us have Instagram pages. I've tagged you both in the post about this show. It's a very useful tool, especially if you're a photographer or even a videographer, anyone who creates visual art or journalism. So what do you guys think of this service itself shutting down? Is this a service you would have used, or did you use? Have you ever used anything to kind of, if you want to disclose, boost your numbers? Or do you think the whole thing is silly and anyone who does it is basically ruining it for everybody else? What's up with you, Joe, since you're new?
Yeah, I've never used a service like that. But it's always a little demoralizing getting those comments with like, "great shot," little hands in the air. Like, just every time, you get the notification, you're like, all right, and then you see it. And so I'm happy, just so hopefully I'll have to see less of that. But yeah, it seems a little weird to try and use those things to get followers, because the whole point is like engagement, I guess. And it's just a real false way of engaging. It's not real. And so it has no impact on my life, except for hopefully I get less stupid comments. And so I'm happy about it. Yeah.
All right, Mark.
I'm kind of along the lines of Joe, but I have to disclose myself. I don't use Instagram nearly as much as I should be. But with that said, I think if I'm getting followers, I want to make sure they're real followers and not something that I went kind of, I guess, in my terms, fishing for. And I don't know. I'd rather, I think I would rather just go out and find those followers myself, because part of the reason, or part of my engagement with Instagram, is not just to put my work out there, but to also see what everybody else is doing. So naturally, if I find other photographers that I enjoy their eye or their talent level, then I'm going to be much more inclined to like their photos, you know, more than once, and then to start following them. And then maybe, you know, in the reality of things, they'll follow me for that reason. But you know, and along the lines, like I was reading here about these silly comments. I mean, really, who wants, you know, great shot and clapping hands, you know, with their photos? I just, it's like, you know, tell me why it's a great shot. So,
Zach, how about you?
No, I haven't. Anyone who can look at my, I think I'm up to like 570 people on my Instagram, which is the one thing that I do use, which isn't you know, a bot service, is focalmark.com. There's also an app which it's really nice, because you just describe what the photo is to a certain level, like, oh, it's a photo of it's a, you know, a travel photo from New York City, and then it gives you popular hashtags that you can then copy and paste into there. So that's helped a lot. Like, I've actually started getting, I usually max out around 20 likes on any of my photos, but I've been getting kind of regularly like 60 and as far as I can tell, I have been getting a lot of the hands and stuff like that, like this, you know, idiotic comments that make no sense. We're like I've been posting all these photos of I took back in 2005 of Kodachrome film shots from New Orleans graveyards, and like the responses that the bots have been putting are kind of hilarious. Like, gorgeous shot. It's like this dark, you know, like kind of miserable photo of a thing, and I'm like,
beautiful.
Okay, yeah, beautiful. Oh man, wow. I'm like, yeah, no, I appreciate the comment, but you know, it doesn't, you know, that doesn't do anything for me. But
inappropriate.
I don't mean to go on a side note, but have you guys heard anything about Kodachrome possibly making a return?
I've heard rumors because what happened was the Kodak, when they made the announcement for Ektachrome coming back, which I'm super excited for. But Kodachrome, I guess they asked him, and he gave one of those non-response responses where it was, I forget what the direct quote was, but it was something along the lines of, well, we'll have to see what's happening soon, or something like that. It was, you know, and everybody
Very
kind of
cryptic. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, everybody kind of read into it that it was they're looking into it. Or maybe he did say they're actually looking into it, but you know, I mean, you know, as we know with, you know, as we know with our current president, oh, I'm looking into that right now, what that means now. So that can literally just mean nothing. So,
you know, Mark, if you're going to tangent us in such a opposite direction or a different topic, you should really try and like roll that in, be like, you know, I really like Instagram, those filters. Hey, they got one of those filters. It's just like the old Kodachrome film. Look at the Kodachrome film.
There you go.
Let's talk about that film. But one thing I wanted to say about this, and again, you know, I mentioned before, Crowdfire was I think a great service that I used when I was in, you know, the infancy with Instagram, because I never really used Instagram before this show. I mean, I had Instagram page, but I barely ever uploaded to it on my personal account. So when I was trying to grow the show audience, you know, I followed a lot of people, try and get follows back. I used Crowdfire to, you know, basically eliminate people who weren't following me back. And then Crowdfire went away, and I was like, well, you know, this doesn't feel right. So I looked at my followers, and I'm like, I'm following all these accounts that have nothing to do with visual journalism. I'm giving these, and I found out a lot of them were bot accounts that were just completely fake or had nothing to do with visual journalism. So I purged all the followers that weren't visual journalism related. And it was a great experience. One, because it felt great not giving a follow to those fake accounts, even if they were following me back. And two, it made the overall timeline and usefulness of Instagram so much better, because now I could just see what visual journalists were doing. You know, the panelists who were on the show, I could follow their accounts much more easily, and I could follow other people in the industry who I think are doing great things. So yeah, I definitely urge anyone who is with Instagram or wants to do Instagram stuff, do not in any means use any sort of service that isn't, again, like what Zach described, I would describe as white hat. So essentially it's just helping you essentially reach an audience that may not see your work, but is in no way trying to manipulate the system or doing anything shady. Because there's nothing more discouraging than seeing you've got comments and they're all fake comments, because you can't do anything with that. So all right, well, let's go ahead and move on to our next subject. So Kodachrome, is that Kodachrome film coming back? Who knows?
Hope so. I got boxes of these.
There you go. No, we're talking about, our next topic is autofocus. So if you haven't watched the show, if you don't watch the show regularly, you may not know that I'm a huge fan of Panasonic and their GH series of cameras. Zach is probably so fed up with me talking about it, 'cause I mention it almost every episode.
It's also, by the way, fantastic, because right now you got back focus going on.
I gotta say, well, I'm using the GH4 to videotape me right now, and the focus is going absolutely insane. It's focusing on my face. It's focusing on the background. Now, this is the GH5 right here in my hand. I'm not recording with that. Yeah. So, anyways, if you're watching the video version of this, I apologize. The focus is. Anyways, so, but it brought up an important issue, or an issue I think is important, which is how important is autofocus in your line of work? Whether you use the GH5 or another camera, do you use autofocus a lot? Do you, whether shooting stills or video, what is the importance of it to you? Is this a function or a factor that would make a deal breaker for you in terms of buying a camera? Mark, how about you go first?
Well, I think it all depends on what you're shooting. I believe one of your questions earlier that I read was about video work, and I was always taught if you're doing video work, you should do as much as you can manually focused right off the bat. And personally, myself, when I watch some of these short form documentary videos made by news photographers, and I can see that they're using autofocus because there's a lot of searching going on in their B-roll or back focus, and it just becomes very distracting. For my still work, if I'm shooting portraiture, sometimes I'll jump back and forth. If I'm not trusting my eyes that day, I'll use autofocus, but I try to use manual focus for portraiture as much as possible. If it's sports action, then I probably usually jump to autofocus. I'm not as talented as some of those old schoolers I've spoken to who got into the game in the 70s and 80s, no pun intended, who would literally, they'd have to learn how to manually focus a 300 millimeter 2.8 or 400 2.8 on the sidelines of a football game. I never got quite that skilled with it, but for the most part, I would say autofocus for still shots I do, and the few times that I do shoot video, it's almost always manual focus. I don't like that searching that you tend to see with a lot of videos, out there on the web.
Okay, great. Joseph?
Yeah, I don't do video, but for stills, I use autofocus as much as I can. My widest lens, my 24, is an old Nikon lens from the 70s, so it's only a manual focus. And I use that quite a bit, especially in low light, whenever my camera is not wanting to focus real well. I'll use that. So I use manual focus quite a bit if I'm shooting low light. And I've gotten pretty good with that, with moving subjects and things. But looking, as I am now, into buying a new body, that is one of the most important things I'm looking at, is autofocus and low light. That's one of the most important things to me that I'm looking for in a camera. Yeah. So, and I'm right now looking if I'm going to decide to go mirrorless or not. And so, yeah, seeing something like whatever this, I was reading about the controversy on it today, and it seems to be real back and forth on this particular camera. But yeah, that's something that I really am dying to have, is something that can autofocus in low light real well consistently on moving subjects. And so, yeah, that would be a deal breaker if it was really inconsistent. Like, some of the articles I read about this camera said that it was, not an issue, and then some were saying it was a big issue. It seems to be a controversy.
I will say that for photos, it does a great job autofocusing. I mean, it's got 255 autofocus points, and it just does a great job locking into the thing that most likely you want. It's just on the video side that it's really iffy in terms of what is it going to focus on, and if it, if you do want it to focus on something, how long is it going to take to actually get to that? But for stills, I think it's great. I will say though that it uses a contrast-based autofocus system, so it may not be the best for low light autofocus. But I think for daylight stuff, it's great. As far as, what's the best autofocus system? I know Sony does a lot of great stuff, but then again, they have awesome low light cameras. So, that might be something you want to go with. And we'll talk about Sony in our last topic this evening, but throw it over to you, Zach.
I was actually looking at the Sony A9 because I remember 693 phase detection autofocus points. It's literally just the entire screen of dots, which I'm just like, oh my god! Like I thought when I got my D600, it was great because I forget what is that, like 14 or something like that.
I still remember my Canon 5.2 had like 13 autofocus.
Yeah. It's like, or back even earlier than that, like when it was film autofocus, it's like well, it's got left, right, and center, and then maybe up and down. Like, but the big thing that I used to keep like my video my video on my video camera. Like I've usually owned a devoted video camera. Like right now I have a JVC 4K camera, super cheap. Only reason I really bought it. And then keep my stills on my DSLR. But I've actually just, since I don't want to, I tend to do both shoots now. I started just shooting on the DSLR. And the brand new video camera I bought like 6 months ago has been kind of sitting, gathering dust a little bit. I may actually end up selling it. But the big problem is that I don't know how it is with the JVC, is that the sound of the autofocus on the if you're recording just in camera, audio in camera, do you get on the JVC? Do you get the sound of the focus? Because like that's one of the biggest things that bothers me about now that everybody's using DSLRs to shoot video. If I'm doing autofocus, then you get that back and forth when it's trying to find it, and then I just basically, it's kind of, it's great if you're just shooting B-roll maybe or something, but if you're actually trying to do an interview and you get that over the person's voice, then it's really problematic. But yeah, I can't stand, I really wish that they would figure out how to do some decent autofocus in whether any single lens reflex, whether it end up being whether it's mirrorless cameras or your standard DSLR. It's the reason why, like I said, I still have to have a video camera, because I try doing a whip pan with a DSLR of any kind. Try to keep focused and zoom out and like come down from the top of a building and focus. Like that's a shot that I do quite a bit when I'm shooting documentary stuff. But I've done it once successfully with a DSLR, but it's not fun to do. But yeah.
Well, I will say, like with the autofocus for the GH4, it's definitely silent. Like I never hear anything on when it's trying to autofocus. It's just that when it does try to autofocus, it is hunting and it's slow and it's not, and again, I've messed with some settings, I've watched some videos. It's not super huge impact in my life right now because I'm mostly just doing photos with it. I used to do a vlog for fun, but I don't have time to do that. But I don't know, if you're controlling the camera, if you're behind the camera, it's not that big a deal because you can just press the shutter release halfway and it'll fix focus, or you can just do manual focus like Mark says, which I do sometimes. And I did a lot during the recent pregnancy and birth of my son, which, by the way, I had a son. I think I already mentioned that, but I'll mention it again because it's awesome.
Congratulations.
Yeah. You have a second son.
I have a second son. Yes. I have a son.
Don't forget the first one. As the first child, this is how it always works. I already have a complex about that. Okay.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, my first son has not felt any sort of sibling rivalry, I guess, or what is that when like you put all your attention on the new child and forget the old child? So he hasn't felt any of that yet. In fact, he's very fascinated with the baby, and I think he's going to be a great big brother. But yes, I had a second child this past Tuesday, so yay to me. And for the most part, I kept the camera on autofocus, didn't really worry about it. But again, when I was hand holding the camera, I did throw it on manual focus to get some stuff as well. So any other thoughts on autofocus or the GH series of cameras? Anybody?
Really? You want me to go out? I have an issue with the
get the piece of paper. Get your your models out to show me the size of the sensor, Zach.
I always have to like rip off. There we go. What is it? What is it about this big? Is that too big or too small?
I think you're being generous. I think that's a bit too big. Anyways, all right. Well, let's go on to our last topic that we already teased it. Zach and me, but Sony dropped the A9, the Alpha 9. It is pretty much a megaton in the professional camera world. Obviously we are all familiar with the Canon and Nikons and their giant sort of DSLR mirrorless or mirror cameras that they have. For Canon, it's what is the 1DX Mark II, I believe, and then for Sony, or I'm sorry, for Nikon, it's the D5. Those are their powerhouse cameras that you see if you're, watching any sort of sporting event, or if you go to the Olympics and you see all these, that sea of cameras, it's always either Nikon or Sony. Well, I'm sorry, Nikon or Canon. Well, Sony looks to have their professional mirrorless camera equivalent that, has all kinds of great specs and features. I think it's like a 24 megapixel sensor, and I kind of think it can shoot like 20 frames a second or something like that.
20 frames a second. Yep.
20 frames a second. And it does it all without any sort of blackout. So you see the image. And I saw a demo of this on a YouTube video the other day, and it's amazing. It's basically like recording video, but it's capturing frames the whole time. So you never lose sight of the subject. So I don't know. It seems like a pretty sweet camera, and I think it could give Canon, Nikon a run for its money. If I was in the market for a large size, professional camera, because it's still expensive. It's a $4,500 body. But if I was in the market and had to choose between Sony, Nikon, and Canon, I would be very tempted by the Sony camera. So, panelists, what do y'all think?
Dave, sorry if I wanted to start first. Dave, didn't I say way back when you were doing Photo Fanatics in 2009 and we were doing maybe the first few episodes?
Good old Photo Fanatics. Woo!
I had a feeling at that point, I said that the camera of the future is going to be a camera that basically is going to just shoot really high resolution video frames, and then you're just going to pull one of those video frames out of that camera. And this sounds, again, I'm not too familiar with this yet, but everything I'm reading about it, I'm, starting to, you got to watch the drool over here. But it sounds a lot like that. I mean, the fact that you're getting not only 20 frames a second, but the fact that you have continuous view of the action or the frame as it's happening in front of you, leads me to believe that. And on top of it, they're talking about shutter speeds as fast as 1/32,000th of a second. I mean, which is crazy.
Yeah, I've never seen any camera do that.
I mean, you're gonna catch. These are the cameras they wish they had when they were trying to photograph high-speed bullets back in the 1950s. They wouldn't have needed all that, all those strobes to do that with. And please, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name of the photographer too. No,
me too.
Nobody. We'll look it up later. We'll have to put it on the blog or something.
Hey, if either of the two viewers know who we're talking about, put a comment on the YouTube page. Joseph, what do you think of this Sony camera? Is it all cracked up to be, or is it kind of nothing?
No, it definitely is not nothing. It's certainly made my list. Like I say, I'm in the market in about 6 months to upgrade, and seeing this, I was watching videos on it, and oh man, it's impressive. There's some things, 20 frames per second, I really don't know if I would need that. But it'd sure be great to have. I was watching videos of them shooting it, and it's like watching a flip book or something. The photos are so close together, and it's like watching a really slow-mo video. It's really strange, and there haven't I think from the tests that they've done so far, I haven't been able to find people that have like a embargo on the photographs right now from that big test that Sony did like last week or whatever, where they invited all those photographers. But I watched some videos of people using it, and yeah, like that 600 and something autofocus points, and the way they were like following the skier or something down the hill, and it just locked on and stayed there wherever the person moved throughout the frame, which was really interesting. And then the no blackout is pretty, I don't even know what that would look like. I'm so used to just having my frame interrupted while I'm looking through it that I feel like it would almost be disorienting. I think that would be like almost hard to get used to, but I feel like that's a pretty good problem to have. So yeah, I actually personally am really interested in this camera because, I mean, the size of it, like, it's not so heavy. I think the only thing, because they're trying to make this thing really available for sports shooters, and they're kind of, one of the complaints is they don't have the lenses for it yet. You know, they don't have a 300 2.8 or 400 2.8. And since I don't really shoot anything like that, I think that it's definitely something I'm looking at really hard. And even though it's only been out for a few days, I mean, I saw the talk about it when it came out and was pretty blown away. So I'm excited to see more tests and see more photos from it. But it looks like an amazing camera, really, and a fairly decent price for what it is, I believe. I mean, the D5 is what, 5 or 6 grand?
It's over, I think it's around 6,300, 6,400, something like that.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. I don't think it's necessarily usurping Canon or Nikon too much with regard to, you know, again, if you're perhaps working, you know, the average person doing this job isn't going to buy the flagship cameras most times from their, you know, for themselves, unless they're a freelancer who is just making bank. I think most of these cameras are being used by contract photographers or by people who work for papers or organizations that, you know, those organizations usually buy that equipment in bulk, and they have a stock room full of lenses that associate with those equipment. So you know, it's going to be, you know, really hard to convince a agency organization to switch over to a completely new system like from Sony, based on, you know, one variably awesome camera. But what I think this might do, again, if sales prove well enough, is really inspire Nikon and Canon to adopt the mirrorless platform. And I think it's a great thing, you know, because it just is such a, it opens up a lot of different tools and capabilities. You know, one of the things I like most about the GH5, which is really not mentioned nearly enough, is the silent shutter capability, which allows me to shoot, again, just like I'm shooting naturally, but without making a sound. And that's so important, not really important, but it's just a nice thing to think about. Imagine, you know, again, if everyone remembers the photo op between Obama and Trump when Obama was still president, and it was just nothing but a sea of shutter sounds, you know. Imagine if that was, you know, all silent shutters. You know, you could actually like maybe hear them whisper to each other, "Man, I hate you. I hate you too. But you know what? Get out of my house." I don't know.
Well, that is another one that I forgot to mention is a big one, because I had to shoot a funeral.
Oh.
And that was, I had never even like considered, you know, how loud shutter is until you're in a room full of like grieving people. And it was the worst day ever. It was awful. It was just absolutely terrible. I felt horrible. Like I felt like I was just totally intruding. And after that, I was like, I have got to get a mirrorless camera, because I mean, it's the only time I've ever needed a silent shutter, but it was like a big time. Like I really, really needed it. And it was terrible. So that would be a huge thing.
And I think it really would actually open up your creative ability, because I mean, when I've shot in situations where, again, I don't want to make too much sound and I don't want to disrupt the scene that's going on, I'll usually shoot a lot less than I normally would shoot, because I want to like quickly get my shot and then like not make any more sound. But if I have electronic shutter, I can shoot the entire thing constantly and nobody's even know I'm doing it. I used it a couple times during when I was documenting the birth of my son, my second son, because, you know, I didn't want to like, you know, annoy the doctors who were in the room and stuff like that or whatever. So it's a nice feature to have.
Yeah.
I've got a bunch of questions with this camera. I think one of the first question I have right now at the college, I'm using D4Ss, which are great cameras, although they're no D5, but they're still amazing camera. I've never had the privilege of using something that new at any of my last employers, but this camera, I do question how is it going to hold up over the years? You know, is it going to hold up to 3 or 4 or 500,000, you know, shutter actuations? So I think that's one of the first.
Mirrorless.
Yeah, true. I mean, you're not going to have that mirror
not going to have
slapping.
the same wear and tear as like a D4S or a Canon camera.
Yeah. But I suppose one of my questions, and it might even be answered here if I do a little bit more digging online, but I want to know what the body is made out of. And I know what the Nikons, they're magnesium alloy largely, or the majority of the body is, with rubberized coverings on certain parts of it. But going back to what you were saying about
it is weather sealed. I know that.
Yeah, I did see that. But going back to what you were saying about the silent mode, we have been talking in our department just recently, and I know our videographer, he uses the A7S2s, which he loves those, but mainly for video. And he keeps saying, "Why don't you try these out for still?" And I've been meaning to, but we're really looking for a silent camera for me as a photographer, as a still photographer, because there are some events at the university that some of the professors, or depending on what it is, if it's one of the services in the memorial chapel, the powers that be are concerned about that loud slapping mirror you hear in a auditorium or a chapel with a 30 or 40 foot high ceiling. So we have been talking about that, and I want to do more reading about this, but I might pressure my boss this year and say, see if we can get our hands on one of these. But the other thing, this kind of makes me think back on photographers like Henry Cartier-Bresson and people that photographers that really they always want to use a Leica, and the reason they want to use a Leica is because unlike SLRs where you had that split second of lag time in your field of view, Leica, you always had that live view because you were looking through a separate viewfinder than the actual lens. And these photographers, they really prided themselves on the ability to see the world and capture it in milliseconds. Just fractions of a second that will either make or break the photo. The famous Photoshop by Eddie Adams, which everybody knows about, of the Saigon street execution, and he took the photo supposedly at the exact moment that the bullet, hit the Viet Cong prisoner's head. And that's what I'm talking about. But, not only with this do you have that live view all the time, you don't have that shutter slapping, which, blocks the view momentarily, but it begs me the question. I'm wondering, okay, so this is an amazing piece of technology, and yes, it is very high priced, but is the ability to not only do you have a live view all the time, but you have this ability to capture 20 frames a second, are you taking any skill away from, or I should say, are you giving skill to people that may necessarily not have developed it because they don't have a lot of experience as a news photographer? Are you putting it in their hands and essentially, making it easier to shoot these photos for people that may not have built up a skill set? You follow what I'm saying?
I think, is it making photography too easy?
Yes, is it making photography, too easy?
Well, you can just paint, especially with that autofocus and everything like that, you can just paint a scene. You just literally just spray and pray, which is something I do all the time at protests because, you don't have the opportunity to sit and do a frame. But, with the quality, with everything across the board, you'll be able to go back in later on and crop the photo that you want out of, the 40 photos that you shot in 2 seconds, and one of those has to be there. I mean, I love the idea of it, especially because if you're taking 20 frames, or you're just taking even a lot of times I just take burst shots in scenes so that I have, at least there's a really good chance that everybody's eyes are open at the right moment, and that the interaction of people is right. you know, in journalism, even in journalism setting, not just in, you know, when I'm taking like a group photo or something like that. So that's, you know, I mean, that at least, but I definitely get what you're saying there. I mean, but I feel like that's kind of everything. I mean, isn't that what you know, digital DSLRs did, you know, and autofocus did, and, you know, I mean, so I guess it's something we're gonna have to figure out. We now have to be better than than the camera. You know,
I used to call it.
Go ahead, Zach. All right, go ahead, Jack.
Yeah.
Mike.
I used to call it the idiot screen on the back of the DSLR because, you know, I went from, I got kind of a different path in my education. I went straight from fine art school into photojournalism. That's where I met Dave. And it was quite a bit different. And I kind of wish I had went out into a newspaper for a while and shot film before I went to Newhouse to continue my education. But I almost felt like when I went to Newhouse to learn photojournalism, I kind of hit a brick wall in my ability because I depended too much on that idiot screen on the back of my tiny little D100 at the time. And I would be too busy shooting the frame and then looking at that and just not be happy with anything I shot. And I would just start deleting in camera.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what the instructor said, you know, don't delete in camera, just, you know, shoot and be confident with it. I still did it anyways because you put that ability in my hands with that piece of technology. So I kind of wish, and this is something I've been meaning to do with my students forever with their digital cameras, because they shoot 2 or 3 frames, they immediately look at their camera. And I think next semester, if I'm still teaching this class, I'm going to go around in the beginning of class, at the beginning of the semester, with a big roll of gaff tape, and I'm literally going to put giant pieces of black tape across all of their electronic displays on the back so they can't see what they're doing. And I'm going to say, look, you gotta take a photo and just be confident that you got it instead of immediately, you know, scanning it and looking at it and oh my God, it's terrible, and you're gonna delete it or try to reshoot it. But
you also have to know the settings. I mean, you have to. I've told this story a million times. One time I was shooting an outdoor concert. Was at Electric Daisy Carnival, and it started pouring rain. Idiot me! I had my plastic bags with me, but I threw them over my shoulder, which created a funnel for the water into my camera. So yeah. Tell me about it. That cost me like $500 to fix. Yeah. I only realized that like 15 minutes in. I was like, and I'm literally looking at water just pour down the strap. And I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. But thank God I had Nikons because even the only thing that went bad on it was the digital screen went out, which was actually surprisingly cheap fix on the D7000s at least. But I couldn't chimp. I couldn't look down and see what I had shot. So I literally just had to trust my memory of, you know, shooting film and being able to go, okay, so no, I can trust, because I shoot mostly on almost completely on manual except for focus. So I just had to trust my memory of, okay, so this would be an aperture, and, you know, and kind of remember what this camera, you know, was able to do, and low light, and, you know, and everything like that as the rain changed. And all my photos unbelievably came out fantastic from that thing. Like, you know, I got the great rain shots where it's, you know, like it's stopping the, you know, you stop the drops of rain with a telephoto if you shoot a portrait. But they came out fantastic. But yeah, that would be, I recommend when I used to work at B&H, I used basically people would come in and they're like, oh, I'm going to school, I want to get my camera. I'm like, have you shot film? They're like, no, we're shooting digital. I'm like, you need to go to the used department and go buy a 50 millimeter 1.8 and at the cheapest film camera you can buy. Just go buy a Pentax K1000. Literally fantastic camera. You can put a nail into the wall with it, which is great. As a person who continually drops cameras and breaks stuff, it's fantastic. And get that, and then shoot a couple rolls of that, and you'll learn more shooting those rolls of film in almost an entire semester of class, because they're expensive. You can't shoot 36 frames, you know, like, it's $11 for a good roll of film now, and that's only 36 frames. And could you imagine if you had a 20-shot burst rate on a? I have my F5 here, which has a fantastic burst rate, which I've accidentally blown through an entire. I accidentally once had my elbow on it, and I didn't notice until the shutter. I hit the shutter, and I already blown through half a roll of film on this, which is why I don't shoot with that a lot anymore. But anyway, back to the Sony camera. I'm unbelievably excited about this camera. It's actually the Sony full frame pro bodies are kind of the only thing that and don't tell anybody this. Whoever's listening, don't tell anyone else, especially don't tell Nikon. I may it's the one camera I may switch from Nikon for.
What?
Yeah.
You're gonna give up the Nikon? What is it, like Excalibur Supreme? What is the service? Nikon Visionary, Nikon Lumineers,
NPS.
My NPS service. No, but I bought I actually I'm on a preliminary status right now because the zoom that I bought from the telephoto that I bought from Adorama, they told me was a gray market lens. Adorama was very good about returning it and everything like that. They did their job. But so now I'm back on a preliminary status, so I don't have the full NPS abilities right now, which is driving me nuts because I really, really need to borrow a telephoto because my DR7200, I don't know if you guys can see.
That's the first generation.
I don't know if you guys can see, if you're just listening, let's just say that the end of my lens is not round. It's a slightly oval shape.
It's oblong?
Yes. And also, if I try to take off the filter, the front gasket tends to come off.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I say like this lens glass would shatter in a million pieces and all jab themselves into your hand if you tried to.
Shockingly, if you see how that works, this is the great thing I love about this lens. It still freaking works. Usually.
Zach, I have that same exact lens, the first generation VR, but mine's in white. Mine's the white version.
You have the white version, yeah.
Which I lucked out and I found it on Craigslist one day. This is maybe 3 years ago, and it was in mint condition. The guy never used it. And I paid, I think, $1,100 cash for it with the original bag. And the two or three scratches in the paint were all for me. But I was sad this year when I was at the Northern Shore course and the Nikon reps were there, and I showed it to them. I said, so I had to reapply for my NPS membership in December. I said I tried to list this lens and I got this error message back. They said, yeah, sorry, that lens is no longer covered because they don't. We don't service that lens anymore. So I'm just like, are you kidding me? Because it's in such great condition. I don't want to get rid of it. And it's the rare white version, which they only, I think, probably less than 5% of their telephotos or zooms were made in gray versus Canon, which made, I think, damn near probably 100 of them in gray.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm probably gonna be due for a new one in a year or so.
Isn't that bad? It's $1,300 on eBay. So
now, speaking of lenses and going antiquated, and I didn't realize this actually happened because I thought lenses, why wouldn't a lens company figure and fix a lens forever? But all of the lenses I own for my camera equipment for my Canon, when I had Canon, they were all like Mark 1s, right? And so when it came time to upgrade or get a new camera setup, I chose to go new camera setup because ultimately, if I wanted to stay within the Canon family, I knew I'd have to get eventually the Mark IIs, Mark III versions of these lenses that were coming out if I wanted to have repair service, or at least repair service from Canon. So I was like, well, might as well just get out of the whole Canon game whatsoever. Honestly, I think Canon is really dragging their feet on a lot of major technological stuff. And what's something I really got to give Sony credit for is constantly trying to innovate the entire market. Them and both Panasonic are doing awesome things to innovate the market and bring 4K, bring these awesome features to everyone. And you were talking earlier about pulling frames from video, Mark and Mike. Mark, why am I saying
Mark?
your name?
Come on, Dave.
I've known you for
Brother.
I've known you for like 12 years, and I don't know why I'm messing up your name. Anyways, Mark, I don't get much sleep. I'll be honest with you. I'm not getting very much sleep. I'll tell you why in a minute. I already told you.
I think we know why.
I think so.
Anyways, what I was trying to get at was I lost my train of thought. Great, there you go. Hey, speaking of technology, how about that Kodachrome, huh? Let's talk about Kodachrome. Why doesn't the Sony A9 shoot on Kodachrome? You know, that's back in my day.
I'm sure there'll just be an app for that you can just put the filter right on. You can shoot in the Kodachrome, which, by the way, I'm completely and totally surprised that hasn't become a thing on almost all cameras at this point. That because of the ability, all these cameras have processors in it enough that they can run an app. Just a basic filter with a histogram change or whatever. And it's unbelievable to me that I can't, maybe not on my pro cameras, but like on a whatever it was, a D5700 now they're up to on the Nikons, just something like consumer based that I can go, oh, I want to shoot Kodachrome.
Wait, isn't there a camera that's doing that? Isn't one of the mirrorless ones doing that?
I thought
you can do like Provia and all these old films.
Yeah, I'm just surprised it hasn't spread. Is it Fuji?
Yeah.
Because I mean that would make sense.
That's Fuji. That's it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, with the GH5, with the GH5, you can choose a lot of different types of image settings and different color types. But yeah, it doesn't have like it doesn't have anything you can download like apps like that. Yeah, but that is something, and that's another area where camera manufacturers in general have really just dragged their feet on in terms of. Why not make it as easy to download stuff onto your camera as it is apps? But I want to get to your point really quick, Mark, what you said about technology. Every technological step in this whole industry is all geared towards making the image review capture process easier, but it doesn't make anyone a better photographer, videographer, visual journalist, or whatever. That comes with time and experience. You can have a camera that, gives you exactly what you're looking for. But if you don't know what a great moment is, if you don't understand lighting and all that, it's not going to make any difference. Again, we talked about pulling video frames from high quality video, pulling your photos from it. I can do that right now with the GH series. I mean, I can shoot 4K video and pull out. It has a photo mode where, it shoots at a certain setting that allows you to pull those frames out much easier. I could do that if I want to all day and just shoot, 4K video and then pull out the frames if I want to. But, I prefer the sort of permanence that comes with photography. Yeah. But, I think it's a good idea to kind of black out their screens, make them trust their equipment better. But at the end of the day, screens are just another means by which, we're using it's just another storytelling medium. I love the screen on my camera because I can turn it up, turn it down. I don't have to get down on the floor and, to get a photograph. And again, you can try and hold that back, but it's all just going to make everybody better. I'm sure their old school photographers are like, you kids in your autofocus, come on. We didn't have autofocus back in my day. Turn that autofocus off. Shoot without autofocus. That's the way to shoot. That's how real photographers do it.
Well, I think the blacking out of the screen, it would be kind of an exercise to see if they could just learn how to see with their eyes and not so much with the camera, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think it builds confidence in the camera. Personally, I usually will fold the screen into the camera so I can't even see it most times when I'm shooting, just because I know I got the shot. I can see it in the actual LCD viewfinder because it's a mirrorless. It shows me exactly what I got, so I don't have to chimp. I can see it as it's developed. So
there's also a lot of really big uses for not having to rely on looking at your screen. I mean, things like there's been moments where it's like, oh, I only have one battery. Like I've gone out to a scene and completely forgot to charge all of my batteries, so I had the one that was in the camera. And like, great, so I'm doing a 4-hour shoot. So no, I'm not looking at my screen at all. I'm not doing it, not relying on that. I'm just gonna have to work on it and pray to God it lasts, or, like I said, things go wrong. Things go wrong with the screen often, but the camera keeps working. So I think that's a extraordinarily great idea for learning. And I think actually it should almost be mandatory as like the first thing that you do when you take a class is like, okay, so no, you're going to learn without actually being able to look at the screen. Like,
or how about this one? Zach, tell me if this has ever happened to you, where you get out to a shoot and you've got your one memory card and you don't have your other memory cards, or it's like your smallest memory card, or it still has the photos from your previous shoot. So you're like super duper limited on the amount of shots you have, or you have to shoot and delete old photos from the previous shoot. That's happened to me a couple times. Then you have to be very conscious about what you shoot and how many frames you take. All right. Well, Pepperidge Farm remembers all the stuff that we're talking about. So you young whippersnappers, get off my lawn. That pretty much brings us to the end of this week's show, unless anybody has anything else they want to say about the Sony A9. Alrighty then, let's move on to the end of the show. So again, thank you so much for listening to the show. This has been Around the Lens episode 71. My panelists, please tell us where people can learn more about you. Joseph.
You can go to my website, josephrushmore.com, or on Instagram at NoJackson. And that's about it. Yeah.
Should say, by the way, Joseph, everybody should check it out. Your photos from Standing Rock are freaking incredible. Oh my God.
Oh, thank you.
I actually I've seen your work. I forget where as well. So, I was blown away by the shots. Like you and Stephanie Keith, basically your two photos basically made that.
Stephanie Keith did the most amazing work ever up there. That was it was incredible.
I'm angry. I'm very angry at her for that. But
I absolutely was blown away when I saw her work from that place. It was unbelievable.
Your work here, your work on this is like, people should really check it out, because it's really it's a different sort of, most of the protest stuff that people really get is the action shots, is people getting hit over the heads or getting sprayed with stuff. But you were able to do not just like the standard portrait stuff. You did some portrait work there, like don't move, take lighting or whatever. But like making moments that were just around the camp, gorgeous and incredible. And like I said, anybody interested in Standing Rock should definitely check that out. But also just in general, looking at how to make amazing images when nothing is really going on, which is always something that if you cover, if you ever covered Occupy or any of these movements where it's not just a protest and a march, it's a bunch of people standing around for hours or days or weeks, which is a lot of things now. You got to like figure out how to make images in the middle time when stuff's not happening, and you did an amazing job on that. So
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right. And Mark, where can people learn more about you?
Well, you can go to to my website, which is markdiorio.com or markdioriophoto.com, and that's Mark spelled with a K, although I do have to add more to that. It's been some time since I've done that. Same with my my Instagram account. I've got to add more to that. That username is Wanderluster. Instead of Wanderlust, it's Wanderluster 800. And you can see some of my nature shots and road race photos and other things I've come across in my travels. But you can also check out some of my photos at colgate.edu. There will be some galleries coming up this year from some of the trips that I'm doing with the students. And that's where you can find my stuff.
All right. Zach, what are you up to?
What am I up to? Well, you can go to zdroberts.com, check out my photos. I have a story going up. I don't know if it's going to go up tonight or tomorrow about the Science March over at nationofchange.org. And I'll be this coming weekend, I'll be driving down to Atlanta to cover the NRA convention, and then doing an immediate turnaround after Donald Trump speaks and running back up to DC, the 10-hour trip, and covering the climate march, because I'm fantastic at planning. I'm gonna put 4,000 miles on my car in a weekend. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I was just trying to change things up, throw you off your game, Zach.
I just discovered basically I can't say no to when somebody offers me an assignment. Basically, I had a month where I didn't do anything at all because I had pneumonia, and now everything's coming at me, and I'm like, I just have to say yes to everything. so yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, you can find me at djmphoto.com personally, or of course at aroundthelens.com for everything related to me, Zach, or the show in general. Please go there. Again, don't forget to try out for the contest. Put your entry in. Also, we just uploaded an interview with David H. Wells. Very interesting stuff in the second in our interview series last month. Zach interviewed Carl Johnson this month. Again, David H. Wells. So by all means, please go ahead and check out that interview. If you subscribe to the podcast already, it should have showed up in your feed. But again, a great interview. We did it in a whole different style than we normally do this show. So I think it's really a step up with regard to audio quality and production quality for the show. By all means, go ahead and check that out. Let us know what you think. If you want to see more of those, if you want to see us interview different people, please let us know. Be happy to take your suggestions. Zach, you can write a comment about it when we post this show, and then bada bing, bada boom, you're giving us info, and you're also entering the contest. So 2 birds, 1 stone. Yeah, all right.
So all I have to do is just, it has to be a substantive comment, though, not just, hands praying and, and nice shot. We'll know if it's a bot.
If your bot comments, your bot does not get an entry into the contest. That's all I'm saying. All right. Well, that's been it for a show that's been Around the Lens, episode 71. I want to thank our panelists so much for taking their time to be part of this show. Thank you, Mark DiOrio and Joseph Rushmore, so much for your time. Really appreciate it. For Zach Roberts, I am David J. Murphy. This has been Around the Lens, episode 71, and we are out.